When a sleek black Mercedes breaks down on a dusty Montana back road, it doesn't just signal car trouble, it marks the beginning of something unexpected. Framed by golden wheat fields and distant mountain peaks, Claire Davidson steps out, her designer suit collecting road dust as semi-trucks rumble by. No signal, no GPS, just a faded old sign nearby. Warren Family Farm, Estree, 1946. Before we go any further, drop in the comments where you're watching from, and if this story grabs you already, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's episode, even wilder. As the early sun stretches long shadows across the fields, 68-year-old Richard Warren finishes up with the horses. His movements are slow but sharp, shaped by a military past no one in town really talks about. Through the dusty barn window, he spots Claire's car. Just another lost city traveler? Maybe. But this one feels different. "Excuse me," Claire calls out, her voice cutting through the morning air. "Could really use a hand." Richard steps out, wiping his hands on a rag, but before he can answer, voices from inside the barn spill out, tense and threatening. "The county's already approved it. Don't be the last holdout, Warren." Claire pauses mid-sentence. She's been in enough boardrooms to recognize pressure when she hears it. "My car can wait," she offers, curiosity now fully piqued. Richard studies her, unreadable. "Nothing that can't wait. Let's check out your vehicle first." As they head toward the car, Claire notices things most outsiders wouldn't. Solar panels tucked neatly on the barn roof, advanced irrigation systems in the fields, equipment far too high-tech for a simple family farm. After a quick inspection, Richard nods. "Alternator's shot. I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours. You're welcome to wait inside. My wife Helen just made fresh coffee." Claire hesitates. "I overheard some arguing. If it's legal trouble, I might be able to help." Richard stands straighter. "Nothing I can't manage." Just then, the barn door creaks open. 3 men in expensive suits step out. The one in front, Gregory Phillips, locks eyes with Richard, hostile, until he spots Claire. His demeanor shifts instantly. "Well, what do we have here?" he asks smoothly. "Another lost tourist?" "Broken down car," Claire replies, unimpressed. She's seen that look too many times in hostile negotiations. Gregory hands her a card. "Gregory Phillips, Riverside Development. We're building the future out here." Claire accepts it, already connecting dots. "Claire Davidson? Davidson and Ross? Chicago." His smile falters. Her reputation precedes her. "You're a corporate lawyer?" Richard asks quietly. "Among other things," she replies, "mostly helping companies get what they want, though lately, I'm not sure that's a good thing." As Phillips and his crew drive off in a haze of dust, Richard returns to the engine, moving with precision, too precise for a farmer. "That gear in your barn doesn't look like regular farm tools," Claire notes. "We try to keep up with the times," Richard replies evenly. A young man steps out of the barn, military bearing unmistakable, even with a limp. "Everything okay, sir?" he asks Richard. Claire's ears perk up. That's not how farmhands talk. "Just helping with a car issue. How's the new irrigation system?" "Way ahead of schedule. Roz has some upgrades for the east field." Claire listens closely. The farmhand talks like an engineer, and Richard, more like a commander than a landowner. A distant bell rings, sharp, familiar. "Helen," Richard says, smiling. "Coffee's ready." As they walk toward the house, Claire catches a glimpse through the half-open barn door. A full classroom setup, whiteboards, diagrams, equipment you'd find in a training facility, not a field. "Mr. Warren," she starts. "Just Richard," he says. "We don't stand on titles out here." "I don't think what I saw in that barn belongs to a standard farm," she continues. "And your farmhand, he walks like a Marine." Richard turns to face her fully now, his face calm, his eyes alert. "Miss Davidson," he says slowly, "sometimes things aren't what they seem. Sometimes they're a lot more. Question is, what will you do with what you've seen?" Before she can respond, Helen appears on the porch, warm smile, watchful eyes. "Coffee's hot, and I've just pulled an apple pie from the oven." As they step up onto the porch, Claire makes her decision. Maybe breaking down here wasn't so bad after all. Sounds like there's a story worth hearing. And I might just have the skills you need to protect it. Richard glances at his wife. A full conversation passes between them without a word, and just like that, the real story begins. He gives a slow nod. After coffee, he says, I'll show you what's really happening in that barn. But first, you need to understand why we do this. Steam curls from their mugs as Richard settles into a worn chair in the farmhouse kitchen. The room itself tells a story. State-of-the-art appliances sit beside tools old enough for a museum. Through the window, the contested barn casts a long morning shadow. I wasn't always a farmer, Richard begins, fingers lightly circling his cup. I joined the Corps of Engineers right out of high school, spent 20 years building roads, bridges, entire towns in places most folks couldn't find on a map. Helen sets a slice of pie in front of Claire. Tell her about Kosovo, she says gently. Richard nods. That's where it really began, 1999. We were helping rebuild after the war. Emergency housing, sanitation, farming. That's when I saw it. The way working the land gave people peace. Farming heals. Claire leans in, sensing there's more behind those words. And that's what you're doing in the barn? She asks. Healing? Just then, a pickup pulls in. Through the window, Claire sees Sean helping another man out, a veteran with a prosthetic leg moving slow but proud. That's Alan Foster, Richard explains. 2 tours in Afghanistan, lost his leg to an IED. Banks called him too high risk to get a farm loan. Helen's voice softens. His daughter just started college. All he's ever wanted was to give her a better life. Richard stands to refill coffee. The VA tries, but recovery isn't just physical, it's about purpose. Dignity. Claire sets down her fork. So, you're training veterans to become farmers? We're giving them a future, Helen says. Farming's just the tool. Richard gestures to the barn. Want to see for yourself? Inside, it's nothing like Claire expected. Sure, there's farm equipment, but also a classroom, computers, software, and tools modified for disabilities. Everything's designed to adapt to the person, Richard explains, pointing out a custom tractor. At a drafting table, Rosa Martinez sketches irrigation plans. Her Air Force jacket hangs nearby, adorned with medals. She's redoing our entire water system, Richard says proudly. She was an engineer before the crash. Rosa doesn't look up. Now I design systems that help farms survive droughts. Funny how life works. Claire notices a wall of photos, graduates standing proudly on their own land. How many? She asks. 37, Helen answers. Some manage farms, some teach. That young man, she points, runs ag education programs for high schools. And Sarah, she created a therapy garden model used by clinics across 3 states. Outside, tension rises. Gregory Phillips's SUV returns, this time with county officials in tow. Right on cue, Richard mutters. What do they want? Claire asks, though she's already piecing it together. The land, the water rights, Helen replies bitterly. They want to build a luxury resort, call it progress. They've already pressured the bank, scared off suppliers, Richard adds. Phillips's cousin is the county commissioner. Suddenly we're drowning in code violations. Claire watches them survey the land. She knows this game. She's played it from the other side. Your program, she asks. Is it officially registered? Zoned? Richard and Helen exchange a look. We kept it quiet, he admits. Didn't want red tape strangling what we built. These folks have seen enough of that. Claire exhales. He's not just taking your land, he's making an example of you. Sean hurries over, limping. They're photographing the irrigation system, claim it's non-compliant. Claire steps forward, lawyer mode activated. Don't let them back without a warrant. Those modifications, are they for accessibility? Yes, Richard nods slowly. Then they fall under ADA protection, Americans with Disabilities Act. If Phillips wants a fight, he better know. He's not just going after a farmer. He's targeting a veterans rehab program. The PR backlash alone will bury him. Richard studies her, cautious. Why would you help us? No offense, but you look more like the people we're used to fighting. Claire stares out the barn door at the departing SUV. Because 20 years ago, a developer took our family farm in Iowa, built a shopping mall, I was in law school, and learned everything about how to take land from people like you. She turns back to Richard. I think it's time I learned how to stop it. Claire turned back to Richard and Helen, her voice steady. Back then, I thought the real power was in the courtroom, in contracts, in control. I became the kind of lawyer I am because I wanted to win. But maybe it's time I use that power for something that actually matters. A low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. Storm clouds gathered above the mountains, symbolic, prophetic. Claire allowed herself a small smile, and well, my car really did break down. Maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. Richard gave a slow, thoughtful nod. Looks like that storm's rolling in. While we wait it out, why don't you tell us exactly what we're up against and what we can do about it? Helen pulled out another chair. I'll get more coffee. Something tells me we'll need it. Through the barn doors, they watched Phillips's convoy vanish down the dirt road, its dust trail erased by the first drops of rain. But Claire knew the real storm was just beginning. If you're feeling this story, don't forget to subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now let's get back to it. The rain passed quickly, leaving behind that unmistakable scent of fresh, wet earth. Inside the farmhouse, Claire spread documents across the kitchen table. Property deeds, zoning maps, development blueprints. She'd convinced Phillips's own assistant to send her the internal files. As Helen refilled mugs, Richard examined the resort's proposed layout. His jaw tightened. This isn't just a resort, Claire said. It's a complete takeover. Luxury homes, golf courses, a private airstrip. They'll drain the valley's aquifer in 5 years. That water serves 6 counties. Richard's fists clenched. And the other farms? Most never saw the full picture, Claire explained. Phillips approached them one by one, told each one they were the only holdout. Classic divide and conquer. A knock at the door. Andrea Reyes stood on the porch, local reporter, notebook in hand, press badge catching the light. Helen whispered, She's been trying to cover the development story, but her editor keeps killing it. Let her in, Claire said. It's time we change the narrative. Andrea stepped inside, eyebrows raised at the scene. Lawyer, farmer, and teacher surrounded by legal documents and blueprints. Perfect timing, Claire greeted her. How would you like a story about disabled veterans, corruption, and the fight to save America's farmland? You can prove that, Andrea asked, pen hovering. Better, Claire smiled. I can show you. They took her through the barn, introduced her to Alan, who was now teaching others soil conservation techniques, to Rosa, who showcased adaptive irrigation systems built for veterans with limited mobility. This isn't just land, Richard explained. These men and women, they're rebuilding their lives, finding purpose again. A bus arrived outside, dropping off a group of local high schoolers. Helen guided them toward the learning zone, where Sean demonstrated hydroponic systems modified for wheelchairs. We're not just training farmers, Helen said. We're growing environmental leaders, educators, community builders. Andrea scribbled notes, eyes wide. And if Phillips gets his way? It all disappears, Claire said, handing her a thick folder. Here's everything we found. Environmental impact, water risk, wildlife displacement. None of it's in the public proposal. Andrea paused. Why are you helping them? No offense, but lawyers like you usually work against people like this. Before Claire could answer, a pickup truck pulled into the yard. Out stepped Thomas Liu, a respected community organizer, followed by several farmers who had already sold their land. Because sometimes, Claire finally said, you have to choose which side of history you want to be on, and I'm good at what I do, because I know exactly how people like Phillips operate. Thomas stepped forward, voice firm. We want to rescind our land sales. We didn't know what was really happening. We can't let this happen to our valley. Phillips will fight back, Claire warned. He'll say you breached your contracts. Then we fight harder, one of the farmers said. We were misled, pressured. We never had the full truth. Inside the barn, Alan was helping a young veteran learn to use modified equipment. The man's prosthetic arm reflected the late-day sun as he got the hang of the controls. Claire turned to the group. "How many of you have family who served? Children, grandkids?" Hands went up across the room. This barn, it's not just about growing crops. It's about honoring those who served by making sure they have something to come home to. Are we really going to let a luxury resort erase that? Click. Andrea's camera captured the moment. Richard stepped forward, voice calm but powerful. "Phillips thinks we're just simple farmers, that will roll over because he has money and friends in the right places. But he forgot something." "What's that?" Andrea asked. Richard looked out across the land, his eyes hard with resolve. "Farmers don't quit, veterans don't surrender, and communities like ours, we don't die quietly." As Claire scans the property line, she spots movement. Right on cue, Phillips's black SUV rolls in, followed by county trucks and a pair of state environmental vehicles. "Mr. Liu," Claire says calmly, "gather everyone in the barn. Miss Reyes, keep that camera rolling. Helen, call every parent whose kid ever took a class here. And Richard," she turns with a smirk, adjusting her blazer, "time to show them what rural hospitality really looks like." Richard raises an eyebrow. "And you?" Claire's smile is razor sharp. "I'm going to remind Mr. Phillips why lawyers like me are called sharks." As the convoy rolls up, Claire notices something she hadn't before. The veterans, almost instinctively, are positioning themselves around key access points, sightlines covered, doors guarded. No one ordered it. Their training never really leaves them. "One more thing," Claire says to Andrea, who's already prepping her next shot. "Your article should probably lead with this. Commissioner Brooks's signature on the development approvals. It's dated 3 months before the environmental impact study even started." Andrea's eyes go wide. She nods and begins filming faster. Around them, farmers straighten their backs, their faces shifting from weary to resolute. Inside the barn, the work continues. Students and veterans remain focused, planting seeds, repairing tools, teaching, learning. The future of American agriculture alive and moving as the storm brews outside. Phillips finally steps from his vehicle, flanked by Commissioner Brooks and 2 environmental officials. His smile falters as he sees the camera crew, the crowd, and Claire waiting with a stack of legal documents. "This is a private property matter," Phillips says with forced confidence. "We have urgent concerns about unauthorized structures and zoning violations." Claire steps forward, holding up the documents. "Funny timing, Mr. Phillips. We were just reviewing your approvals, especially the ones dated before the actual studies were finished." Brooks tries to interrupt. "Now see here." "No," Claire cuts in, her voice sharp, clear, and meant to be recorded. "You see here, your signature appears on documents from March 15th. The environmental impact study wasn't completed until June 20th. So unless you're psychic, something's very wrong with this process." A murmur ripples through the crowd. Phones lift, cameras flash. Thomas Liu is filming everything. "You're out of your jurisdiction," Phillips growls. Claire smiles. "The moment you targeted a program serving disabled veterans, this became a federal matter. Would you prefer to talk about ADA compliance? Or about how your impact studies completely ignore downstream water usage and agricultural impact?" Behind them, the quiet rhythm of farm work continues. Inside the barn, Alan helps a new participant navigate a control panel, the man's prosthetic arm glinting in the light. "They can get therapy somewhere else," Phillips snaps. "Progress doesn't stop because of some informal program." Helen steps forward. "Informal?" She holds up a thick binder. "This is 5 years of documented outcomes, graduation rates, job creation, 17 new farms launched, over 200 jobs created. Our graduates aren't just recovering, they're rebuilding rural America." Richard joins her, his calm voice carrying weight. "Show them." Alan emerges from the barn with the young veteran beside him. The man expertly operates the equipment, navigating modified controls with precision. 2 months ago, Alan says, he couldn't feed himself. Now he's learning to run a farm. "You want to look him in the eye and tell him your resort matters more?" Phillips shifts uncomfortably as Andrea's camera zooms in. The environmental officials exchange uneasy glances. "This is still private property," Brooks insists, reaching for a foothold. "Interesting you mentioned zoning," Claire says, pulling out one last document. "Because I have planning commission records from 1985, signed by your own father, Commissioner Brooks, designating this land for agricultural education and rehabilitation." Silence. Rosa steps forward and unrolls her schematics on a workbench. "Would the environmental officials like to see how we've reduced water consumption by 60%, or how our soil conservation model is now used statewide?" Despite the tension, the officials drift toward her presentation, professional curiosity overriding political pressure. Phillips leans in toward Claire, voice low and bitter. "This is harassment. I'll have your license." Claire doesn't flinch. "Go ahead. My firm's already reviewing the entire case. They're fascinated by how often your developments come with conveniently timed code violations." She smiles. "This time, Mr. Phillips, you picked the wrong farm." As Shaw leads students past the barn, explaining soil testing techniques, their excited voices rise into the air, a stark contrast to the tension on Gregory Phillips's face. He steps forward, trying to reassert control. "You're fighting the inevitable," he warns. "This valley will be developed." Thomas Liu steps between him and the crowd, flanked by local farmers. "No," he says firmly. "We're fighting for our heritage, our families, our future." He turns to Andrea. "Tell them about your grandfather's farm, Mr. Phillips, the one your father foreclosed on to build his first golf course." Phillips's face flushes with anger. Andrea's pen doesn't stop. "These people," Claire says, gesturing to the crowd, "aren't just defending a farm. They're protecting a vision of what America could be, where veterans find new purpose, where communities look after one another, and where progress means building, not destroying." A school bus arrives, unloading more students. Parents follow, drawn by urgent texts. The gathering crowd swells with energy, with purpose. Richard steps forward, his voice steady. "Your project isn't progress," he says. "It's profit, dressed up in promises. Real progress is what happens inside that barn. Lives rebuilt, hope restored, a community rising together." The environmental officials finish reviewing Rosa's water conservation data. Their expressions turn serious. "These numbers, they contradict everything in Mr. Phillips's submitted reports," one official states. "This needs to be reviewed, thoroughly." Claire addresses the crowd. "This, right here, is why we fight. Because backroom deals, environmental lies, and community displacement only survive when no one's looking. Well now, everyone is." Phillips signals to Commissioner Brooks. They retreat toward their SUVs. "This isn't over," Phillips mutters. "No," Claire agrees. "It's just beginning." She holds up her phone. "By the way, Mr. Phillips, my firm's partners are very interested in representing these farmers pro bono. Turns out they have serious concerns about how those land deals were negotiated." Andrea walks up as Phillips disappears down the road. "You planned this, didn't you?" she asks. "Getting him to show up, having everyone ready?" Claire watches Richard comforting nervous farmers, Helen organizing students, veterans teaching as if the confrontation never happened. "Sometimes," Claire says softly, "you have to make people see what they're about to destroy." Andrea looks around. Alan coaching a young vet, Rosa explaining irrigation systems to once skeptical officials, the entire community aligned in purpose. "The real story," Andrea whispers, "isn't about a land deal at all." "No," Claire says. "It's about what happens when people remember that community isn't just a word, it's a choice we make every day." The barn hums with activity. The steady rhythm of learning, healing, and rebuilding drowns out the noise of Phillips's departing convoy. But everyone knows this is just the first battle in a much bigger war. As evening settles over Warren Farm, the sunset paints the weathered barn in warm gold. Inside the farmhouse, Claire sits with Richard and Helen, watching Andrea's article spread online. 300 shares in the first hour, Helen notes, scrolling her phone. People are finally paying attention. Richard stares out the window, where Allen and Shaw finish the day's lesson. Visibility cuts both ways, he says quietly. Phillips won't stay quiet for long. Good, Claire replies, already reviewing her notes from the standoff. Let him make noise. Every move he makes now will be under a microscope. But if we want to win this, we need to hear from the veterans themselves. Their stories are the story. As if summoned, Rosa enters with soil samples and a binder of field data. Her movements are precise, her posture military. The environmental officials want a full briefing, she says. They were especially interested in our water efficiency model. She hesitates. They also mentioned they've seen similar problems in Phillips's other projects. Apparently, we're not the first farm he's tried to erase. Just then, Thomas Liu returns, arms full of takeout containers. From the diner, he says. On the house, whole town's buzzing. Dozen more farmers want to meet tomorrow. Some are talking about pulling out of their sales agreements. Claire lays the food out across the table, simple meals shared like strategy, like solidarity. She turns to Richard. Tell me about your first veteran. How did this all really begin? Richard exchanges a glance with Helen. Emotion clouds their eyes. Bobby Martinez, Helen says softly. Rosa's brother. Rosa pauses, then nods. Found him sleeping in the barn, Richard recalls. 5 years ago. 3 tours in Iraq. Couldn't find his place back home. He had the skills, mechanical genius, but nowhere to use them. He redesigned half the equipment here, Rosa adds, pride and grief woven into her words. Before, she trails off. Before his last battle caught up with him, Helen finishes gently. But in those 2 years here, he helped build something bigger than himself. He showed us what was possible. Claire leans back, the full weight of the story settling in. That's why you kept the program quiet. It wasn't just about avoiding regulations. It was personal. Richard nods. Every veteran who walks through that barn, they're all Bobby. They're all fighting invisible wars. We weren't about to let bureaucracy get in the way of giving them a chance to heal. Headlights cut across the driveway. Another truck. More farmers. And among them, Claire recognizes faces she last saw shaking Phillips's hand. When Claire Davidson's Mercedes broke down on a dusty Montana road, she didn't know she was about to stumble into something far bigger than car trouble. Warren Farm, just a name on a weathered sign, turned out to be the center of a quiet revolution, a place where broken veterans found healing through soil, purpose through service, and community through action. Claire, a high-powered corporate lawyer, was used to fighting for profits. But what she found here wasn't just land, it was legacy. Veterans like Allen and Rosa weren't just recovering, they were innovating, designing adaptive farming systems, teaching students, healing others as they healed themselves. But progress had a different face elsewhere. Gregory Phillips, a developer with deep political ties, aimed to seize the valley through rezoning, lawsuits, and intimidation. His plan? Luxury resorts. His method? Divide, pressure, and conquer. But when his actions threatened not just land, but purpose, the community rose. Veterans stood in silence, dignity radiating from every movement. Farmers shared bread and stories. Students defended the programs that had changed their lives. Even Phillips's own uncle, Marcus, a veteran trained at the farm, chose truth over family legacy. The tide turned when environmental reports revealed Phillips's developments were poisoning the valley's water supply. Meanwhile, the very veterans he tried to displace were building systems to protect it. When a flood threatened the region, it wasn't politicians or developers who responded, it was the veterans. In the pouring rain, they worked side by side with students and neighbors, using military precision to save farms, homes, and hope. That's what Phillips called a liability. Public pressure mounted. The truth spread. What began as a forgotten farm became a national model. Training centers opened across the country, and programs once run in silence now received state recognition and federal funding. Even Phillips changed. What he once tried to bulldoze, he now helps build. The corporate lawyer who once measured success in billable hours, she stayed. Because sometimes purpose finds you in the most unexpected places. And in that old barn where it all began, veterans still teach, crops still grow, and hope, quiet, steady, and unstoppable, continues to take root in the most American soil of all, the kind that remembers what matters,